Hello, I'm Bob Smith. I am 87 years old. I live in Beaver, Pennsylvania. And I've lived in Beaver for the greater part of my life. Some people say, have you lived here all your life? I say not yet. But I have lived here for some 80 some years. So this is my home. And I really think there's no place like Beaver. My earliest memory of my childhood would have to be in 1932 when the Beaver County Courthouse caught fire and was destroyed by that fire. It started in the morning of a spring morning in May, and the painters had been working on the tower and repainting the tower, and they were using a blowtorch to burn off some of the old paint instead of scraping it. And somehow or other they set fire to a bird's nest that was in one of the crevices of the tower. They tried to beat out the fire with what they had, but that was not successful, so they had to climb down 2 stories on the ladders, go and look for a bucket of water, and then climb the ladders again. By that time, the fire had gotten underneath the roofing and was already starting to travel. So it started then, and that was at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and it went all day long. In the afternoon part, by the noontime, it was obvious that it was not going to last the rest of the day. The tower, the base of it had burned through, and the tower collapsed all the way down into the basement. They had school children came over, and the files were all in another wing of the building, and they helped in carrying out the records and so forth from the courthouse and stacking them on the courthouse lawn. I wasn't around to see the end of the fire because it was so smoky that you didn't want to be around there for too long. By the end of the day, it was nothing but ruins. But today, if you come into Beaver, you will see a remembrance of that fire. There's a clock tower at the corner of College Avenue and 3rd Street, and that's an exact replica of the clock tower of 1932 where that fire began. And you will see not only the clock tower itself, but the bell, which was in that tower, a bronze bell that was made in 1877. And it fell through the tower clear into the basement of the building. Somehow or other, it was not broken. So it's been recovered and restored, and it now sits on a pedestal right underneath that clock tower. Yes, I went to elementary and went all the way through grade school and high school in Beaver. And I would say, and I'd have nothing to compare it with, but I think the results speak for themselves. I think that this was an excellent place to have gone to school. We had good teachers. I remember some of my teachers being just interested and knowledgeable and helpful. And I really think that had a lot to do with the kind of people that graduated from here. I remember some of my teachers especially well. One was our geography teacher, and she helped us to learn about the geography not just of Beaver County, but of the whole world. And we knew the names of mountains in Japan and oceans, the names and places, and what it was like on the South Pole. She really excited us about the geography of this world. So by the time we got out into that world, it was not a stranger to us. The first building where I went to school was the Lincoln School building over at 4th Street, and that was the elementary school of its day. Went there until the 6th grade, and In 7th and 8th grade, the junior high school was housed in the Fort McIntosh School building, which is next door to where the present-day fire station is. After that, the senior high school was on College Avenue, and that was a building that had originally belonged to Beaver College. It was the classroom for the college when it was here before it moved away in 1925. There's an intimacy that goes with small schools that I think is hard to match in a great big school. And one of the good things about Beaver High School was the formation of friendships that have lasted the whole lifetime. There are some of us who still get together, the few of us who are left still get together now and then to have lunch and just talk about what it was like to go to school in Beaver. Well, I'd have to say that the clock tower restoration is the most significant historical restoration. Beyond that, we have to think about Fort McIntosh as well as being a really significant historical site. This goes back to the time of the American Revolution, and it was built in 1778. Fort McIntosh was not the scene of any military battles, but it was a stronghold to guard against incursions by the Indians, and it was the western headquarters of what later became the United States Army. So it is a very important place in history, and to this day you can still see exactly where it was. One of the first jobs that I can recall was an after-school job in what is now the Fort McIntosh Club. And I set pins in the bowling alley there for about 2 years in my spare time. One of my summer jobs was I had the privilege of working at Curtiss-Wright Propeller Plant, which was at that time making airplane propellers for American warplanes. And because I had practice in mechanical drawing, I was able to work in the drafting room making copies of the airplane propeller blades. There are lots of different ones, and a lot of them were built right there in this plant in Beaver, including, I am told, that the propeller blades on the B-29 that dropped the atomic bomb in Hiroshima was manufactured in the Beaver plant. Before I had quite finished high school, I was drafted by the United States Army in World War II. The war was not over yet, but it was reaching a climax, and I had to leave school before graduation and answer the call of duty. Went to an infantry replacement training camp. The Battle of the Bulge was raging at that time, and I fully expected that we would be sent to Belgium. And in fact, the group I was with did go to Belgium, but they pulled me out of the line, and for some special reason, they sent me to the Air Corps, which is unbelievable. And I really think it was because I had some experience with drafting and mechanical drawing and airplane propeller blades. I was sent to San Antonio to camp there for the next year and a half, and that's where I spent my time during World War II. As you all know, we made a lot of propeller blades, we did a lot of things right, and we won the war. After the war, when I returned home, my brother, who was also in the war, in the Navy, was just finishing his degree at Geneva College, and he asked me if I knew what I was going to do, and of course I said no, I don't have any idea. He said come with me, and he assisted me in getting enrolled in Geneva College, where I stayed for the next 4 years. Actually 3.5 years. I went there under the GI Bill and graduated from there in 1949. My degree was in psychology, which I like to think helps me understand people. I still haven't figured it out entirely. After graduating from Geneva College, my first real job was with Michael Baker Corporation. And I was hired as a draftsman. And the first job was working on mapping the entire country of Spain with aerial photography. And it involved hand drawing topographic maps of the entire country. A real experience. The company was engaged in a number of traffic and transportation contracts in Pennsylvania and Ohio. And for about the next 4 years, my job was in putting together and illustrating and printing the reports that were sent to each of these localities for the work that had been done. Beaver has certainly changed a lot in the years since I went to high school. But from the beginning, you knew when you came into this town that it was different than some of the other towns in the valley. Streets were well kept. There were lots of trees and lots of beautiful homes, a lot of wealthy people. And some of this was a carryover from the days when it was a college town, I'm sure. Beaver College was here. It kind of set a tone for the culture of the community. But it was always a good place to live, a safe place, and a forward-looking community. Because of this, it became, and because we had a railroad that passed through here that had passenger service to Pittsburgh, it became a bedroom community for a lot of people who worked in the city. Myself being one. I spent 26 years traveling back and forth to Pittsburgh on the train. And it was a regular routine for many of us to go down there and get on the train in the morning and go to the city and spend the day there and come back in the evening on the evening train and come back to Beaver. People used to say, why do you do that? Why don't you live in Mount Lebanon or someplace that's closer to the city? And I said, Mount Lebanon is not Beaver and never will be. When I think about Beaver and what it looks like today compared to what it was when we were in high school, there really are a lot of changes that have taken place. When we were in high school, there was a G.C. Murphy 5 and 10 on the corner where there's now a Starbucks and Mario's Pizza. And across the street from that, there was a dairy store, Funk's Dairy, that had an ice cream parlor. And it was a wonderful place to go after school and have a milkshake or an ice cream soda. So those kind of things were part of the character of the town back then, and they're still there, but they're a different type of place than they were then. You know, a little while back we were talking about places that were there when I was growing up, and one that was there later on was the Beaver Lunch. It was next door to the movie theater, and it was run by a fellow who was a Greek immigrant, and he used to collar me by the shirt when I'd come in there and said, "You people don't know what you have here. He says, you've got something special. You ought to do something about it." His name was Harry Phillips, and Harry Phillips was a Greek immigrant, and he came to this country and studied the history of this place until he knew more about Beaver history than anybody else that was walking the streets. And he said to me, you can do things, you ought to be doing something about this. And I sort of took that as, well, yeah, I don't know what that would be, but over time, it wasn't very much longer until Harry himself took on the role of being the historian of the town, and he was good at it. He knew what he was talking about. So he drew me into the formation and development of the Beaver Area Heritage Foundation. He was one of the founder, the original first person, and he drew me into it in a way that I couldn't refuse. And I'm so glad he did, because it's been so interesting. It's opened up another world to me, and there is no end to it. This town really is something unique, something special, and something that should be preserved wherever possible. So I think that's one of the things that has caused me to have more interest and more participation in preservation and restoration type activities, because it really is someplace special. The question was, why has Beaver lasted as it is today, a thriving community, and kind of a standout in that respect? Beginning of that, I always think, had to do with first of all, with the geography. We're on a level plain above the flood level, and the second thing would have been the influence of Beaver College, I think. And in the early days, it imposed a certain type of character to the community. That it was a college town, and it was run with very strict rules and goals, and it produced some very intelligent people. And the third thing is that it had, because of these other things, a certain amount of wealth accumulated here. People had jobs and careers and professions that allowed them to become wealthy. So on a per capita basis, there were probably more wealthy homes in Beaver in the 19th century than in any place else around. So these things all go together to creating an atmosphere of the kind of people and the kind of place that the community is. And this also produces leadership in the kinds of people that live here. These are people who, by the nature of their profession or their career, have found a leadership position, whether by chance or by intent, that makes them qualified to help preserve and improve on this community. So I really think that this is not the ordinary place. It is someplace special, and those are not just empty words. It's here because of the background and the history, and it's here because at least we're smart enough to take advantage of that. I like to think that. I think growing up in a place like Beaver, you can't help but be impressed by the things that you see and the things you learn about, which have been here for a long, long time. And one of those obviously is Fort McIntosh, or the site of Fort McIntosh. But there are other things. There are buildings in the town which date back in various ways to the history of the town, what it was 100 or 200 years ago. And you look at things and you wonder, why was it designed that way, and why doesn't it look like that building over there? And who lived there in the first place? One of the places I lived in over my years in Beaver, when I was first married, was a house that had originally been built in 1808 and was the home of Judge Agnew. Judge Agnew was a historian, and he ended up as the chief justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. But the house he lived in was right behind the courthouse in Beaver. And I had to learn more about it. Among the things were that the floor joists in the basement were 12 by 12 logs that came out of Fort McIntosh. Well, naturally, that made me more interested in Fort McIntosh as well. As I think about what we've been saying, I realize that having people like Harry Phillips in our community really made an impact by what they said and what they did. And it got me involved in a way that I couldn't refuse. And I found out that it was fun. And it became interesting to learn more about the local history. And it became even more exciting to be in a position to do something about it. Like Harry said, you got to do something about it. I've had the privilege of working within the community, going back 10 or 15 years on the streetscape project, which transformed the main street of the town and gave it a new look and uplift, at the same time protecting and preserving its historical significance. Had a hand in getting the clock tower replica constructed and built, and part of that. Some other things that are in the town that I can say I had a hand in that. The Flag Plaza at the corner of College Avenue, the historical monument on River Road, the birthplace of the 3rd Infantry, the 1st American Regiment, the dedication of Fort McIntosh and its restoration way back several years ago. These are all things that once you get involved with them, there's no stopping. There's no end to it. It's only a beginning. Right now, I'm involved with working to preserve and redevelop the train station here in town. That's a place I went to every day for 26 years, in and out. It's a place that is extraordinary, and it's how it represents the community and the type of the wealth of the community is reflected in the wealth of the construction of that station building. I think one of the interesting things about growing up is that for the first year or two of grade school, I was ill a good part of the time, and I spent a lot of time absent from school. And there being no one else around, I had to entertain myself, and I did that by learning to draw pictures. And I spent a lot of time just drawing. My mother found one that I'd drawn of the Queen Mary steamship when it was brand new. My mother thought it was pretty good, and she sent this drawing of the Queen Mary steamship to Scholastic magazine, who apparently thought it was pretty good too. And they in turn forwarded it to the Cunard steamship line. And she heard from them some months later with a very nice letter thanking her for the drawing of the ship and inviting her and myself, if we could make it to New York City sometime when the Queen Mary was in dock. They offered us a full tour of the ship, top to bottom. That was the kind of thing that encouraged me to spend more time drawing pictures. I'm sure that doing things like drawing a ship made me more conscious of details, and why is it made this way instead of that way, or what is this component meant for. I became much more conscious of details in construction and design. And so as time went on, I started drawing pictures of buildings and places that had details. Among these was the courthouse that burned down in 1932 because I remembered it so well. When they rebuilt the courthouse, after the fire, they built a new building on the same foundation because it was Depression and they couldn't afford to dig a new foundation. So some years later, decided I wanted to do a drawing of that old courthouse. And so my daughter, who was in high school at that time, went with me, and we got a 50-foot tape, and we used it to measure the entire footprint of the courthouse. And we managed to do it without getting arrested. I don't think I could do it today, but that prompted me to make a detailed drawing of the old 1932 courthouse. Subsequently to that, I thought, well, the drawing is pretty good. Maybe what we really ought to have is a model, a three-dimensional model. I spent almost a year creating a scale model of the 1877 courthouse in Beaver County. I've always been fascinated by trains, and being a commuter for 26 years, if you can put up with that for 26 years, you have to like it, I think. But I'm very much interested in trains. Had a chance once upon a time to actually sit in the engineer's seat of a locomotive and actually make it run for a little while. So trains are just my second love, and I used to I get catalogs of model trains and wear the ink off the pages by looking at them for so long and over and over and over. And as time went on and circumstances permitted, I was able to begin to enlarge a collection of model trains. And when you have model trains, you have to have something to do with them besides putting them on a shelf. So that got me interested in model building, and actually in historical buildings in particular, like the courthouse. So it became a pastime in spare time to work on building scale models of old Victorian period buildings. I built a model of the house I lived in when I was a child. Built a model of the house I lived in when I was married, and built a model of some of the buildings in Beaver. It stimulates your imagination and stimulates your interest in the history of what you're looking at. So I found that to be a very worthy pastime for way over 50 years. There is so much here that's working that you can't ignore it. You get drawn into it, you can't look back or step back. You've got to become part of it. And years from now, my children and grandchildren and other people that I know will say, yeah, I remember when Bob was working on that project, and I remember when Bob was designing this feature over here, and I remember when they did that project over there. It's kind of nice to be able to have things like that you can point to and say, I was part of that. So I really and truly am proud of the part that I've been permitted to enjoy in this town. And I'm very sincere about that. Our good Lord says you should. It's no sin to have talent. It's a much greater sin to have talent and not to put it to work. And I kind of look at it that way. I've been blessed in some ways, and I've tried to make good use of those talents. Thank you.